my first time doing something like this, so I hope you bear with me. Recently, I had a bit of a problem, and Congressman Tierney, he helped me out, and it meant a lot to me and my family. It has to do with Veterans Affairs. And I'm here today perhaps to tell you a little of that story, but also to remind you that the Congressman has been an unwavering supporter of military, soldiers, sailors, and veterans, and he really deserves a lot of credit for what he's done. My name is Walter. I live in Marblehead. I have for the last 40 years with my lovely wife, Maureen, and I worked at the General Electric for 25 years. I'm a combat veteran of the Vietnam War, and I was an officer aboard U.S. Naval Destroyer, USS Norris, during the height of the war in '66 and '67. And I was at a Navy reunion about 4 years ago, and some of my shipmates were talking about the awards, the decorations, the medals they had earned but had not received. So I volunteered to follow through with the government. And I wrote to the Naval Records down in St. Louis. And so I attached that letter to another letter following protocol. I wrote to OPNAV, Naval Operations, Washington, D.C. And another year went by. And so for the first time as a constituent, I wrote to Congressman Tierney in Washington. I attached my two letters, and I said, can you help me to get a response from the Navy? And I'd say 10 or 12 days went by, and a young fellow, a staff worker from the Congressman, called me up. His name is Mike Sanger. He's an Iraq veteran, a wounded Iraq war veteran. And Mike said to me, you need a little more information, but we'll get this done. And really, this was in, I think, June or July. 2 months later, Mike called me up and he said, Walter, there's a letter from the Navy to Congressman Tierney listing these medals, and I have a box on my desk with your name on it with 5 medals. And he said, you know, when the Congressman comes back from Washington, he'll present them to you. I really didn't want the big deal. When I heard he was coming, I got 2 of my 6 grandchildren, 2 little boys, my wife, and we went up to Peabody, and the most beautiful display as I walked in the door with a big thing with ribbons and medals, and the Congressman had some nice words to say, and then he spent time talking to my grandsons. And only the fact that they're 8 and 13, you'd have 2 good votes, but they'll be there. I remember about 15 years ago, there was a huge debate about community-based outpatient clinics for the veterans. And Congressman Tierney was a new congressman, and he worked on that. And it was very important because the older and some of the disabled vets had to go down to Jamaica Plain, West Roxbury, or out to Bedford. Very hard to get transportation to those locations. And the congressman worked on it. We got the clinics. We still have them. The first one we had in the state, or the first and second one, is in Lynn on Boston Street, and it's treated thousands of fellow seniors. I just have 2 more. The other is the hospital in Bedford itself was, I think during the Bush administration, they were consolidating, they were going to close Bedford. And the congressman worked with a bunch of veterans groups and the Massachusetts delegation, actually, and kept Bedford open, and that's very important to an awful lot of people. And the third thing, I hope you remember this was only 5 years ago, the Walter Reed Army Medical Center. Veterans, they came out and they went into the rehab facility, and you know, I actually, a couple of their family members started to complain about the rats and the cockroaches and the mold on the wall. This is a medical hospital. Mold on the ceiling, and the first hearings in Congress were Congressman Tierney. The investigation was started, and he brought the Republican congressman, Senator Schumer, everybody over there. And they cleaned up that hospital. And that's a great credit to Congressman Tierney. Another thing, and that is that we have to keep John Tierney in Washington.